You no doubt heard of cabbits. They're a bit of a mix of furries, making hybrid species and a bit of folklore and, mythology and cryptids and stuff like that. My mom has talked about cat-rabbit mixes before, and she definitely doesn't know anything about furries, and she told me about them when I was a kid, so a solid 25 years ago. In real life, these supposed sightings are usually because of misidentification. That's pretty common with myths, folklore, and cryptids. You catch a glimpse of an animal you've never seen in person, and it bolts out of sight, leaving you with just a glimpse of it. My mom probably saw a manx, a kind of cat with a very short tail. As for the hopping, it turns out the gene that causes short tails in cats can also cause skeletal and nerve issues. These skeletal issues can result in their hind legs being longer. That means that the cat will need to hop or look like it's hopping when trying to get around. Pretty weird, right? Animals are weird. But the cabbit I'm talking about today is an open species and is a better representation of how fantastical a cabbit could really look to, match the level of myth. The Mitkit are a mixture of several features of cats and rabbits, but goes so far outside of hybrid territory. This is resulting in a unique looking creature. Let's go over anatomy real quick so you can learn how to design your own. I'll talk a bit about lore and some design stuff at the end because, surprise, this is an actual review. I don't usually do reviews. But unfortunately, there isn't much info about this species as the owner's art accounts haven't been active in about a year. There also hasn't been any updates to the species on their DeviantArt since the release in 2020. The artist is Nimbliss on DeviantArt and Toasted_art on X. Mitkit are most easily identifiable by their large ears that droop well past their waist, resting around the knee. The ends of the ears are massive, monstrous, big bappers, like paws, like that of a giant lion. To call them ears is actually a little misleading, as the species is actually incapable of hearing. That's because these aren't ears at all, but instead fully fledged arms. Despite the monstrous look of them, they're actually quite soft, feeling more like an overstuffed plushie. In addition to these arms, while being lion-like on the example, can be any shape. The arms attached to their torso are pretty thin and lack claws, looking more like rabbit paws. These little arms are used to manipulate magic and for using their big arms in a more natural way. When a Mitkit is using its large claws to strike, they'll rest the smaller arms underneath the bigger arms, as if they're piloting a mech or using some sort of exoskeleton. Both of the arms can move separate from one another, but overall it's much easier to move them if both sets work in tandem. Their back legs are pretty long and digitigrade, ending with small feet with large claws. Considering it has paw pads and forward-facing eyes, we have to assume they eat meat like cats. Also, the lack of hearing and presence of large arms suggests that they might be top of the food chain. Since an apex predator might not need all of its senses, it doesn't have any competitors. They're also likely solitary creatures as their main form of communication varies depending on the individual. Some use magic to make symbols, and others use telepathy. So despite the cute, fluffy exterior, you might be looking at the most dangerous thing on two legs. Now, for the bulleted list kind of stuff. Feline-shaped head, long thin tongues, no restrictions on eye shape, they have horns, cat-like noses, no restriction on fur length or tail length. Now, typically my videos aren't reviews, but the viewer who sent this requested it be a review. Personally, I think Mitkits are pretty cute, but I worry about the muddy silhouette. It's definitely a unique silhouette, but it's not easily recognizable. I wouldn't worry about this as most species don't pass this test. Not even my species do. Basically, the silhouette test is a character design theory that every character you make should have a unique and clean silhouette. Since the brain works on pattern recognition, even a silhouette can be your character's brand. Think about Mickey Mouse. You could probably spot Mickey Mouse in a crowd even if he was like blurry or like hiding or whatever, just because like he has such a unique and specific shape. The example character is cute, but I think as an example character it doesn't necessarily work the best. I think the pattern's a little complicated. I think they should be the plain black and white ones or a simpler one in terms of patterns, as it allows the viewer to focus more on the body shape and the design. The design is great though, but I do think the tail might be making the silhouette a little muddy. I think maybe a smaller tail or a thinner tail should have been opted for, as it mixes in with some of the other parts on the silhouette. As for the guide, it's a good guide. I like it when people do guides like this. I hate it when it's just a bunch of bulleted lists. But the species really needs more lore. Any lore, really. Lastly, don't use default fonts or Canva fonts. I'm gonna go on for this for a while, but you're an artist, you have easy access to art software, and there are numerous free fonts, and they are super easy to install. Your font decides the tone at which this is read, and will influence what people think of the species. The art is just as important as the font because this default font that comes with Windows makes me think you wanted to get it out as soon as possible. The font is an opportunity to set the tone and vibe of the species. As an example, I've changed out the font on one of the text boxes and the title. This is the font that I use the most. It's called Choco Shake. It's completely free and has a fun and carefree but artsy vibe. This is a fancier font that works good for the species name. You can use it as the info text, but you run the risk of it affecting how legible the text is. So you can elevate this this even further than what I've got here by using a more readable font for the subtext. Having an outline is also important on your text because it helps with the legibility too. You got to keep in mind that there are people who are colorblind who's going to be looking at your stuff, so if your colors are too close to each other, and it's really hard to account for all the kinds of color blindness because it's so varying levels of different color saturation and stuff like that. So just make sure to include an outline, anything you think that can help distinguish it from the background. If you want to make the title text fancier, we can do some artsy stuff, and you should, because this is an opportunity, not a chore. I changed the text to match your mascot's brightest color, added the darkest as the bottom half, blurred it, then used a particle brush to add the bright freckles from the shoulders of the mascot. This might be overdoing it, but I think it adds depth and character to the text, while also boosting the readability. You could go further by drawing horns on the M and the S at the end of the word, but that would definitely be overdoing it, I think. Then it would border too much on looking like, I don't know, VTuber titles. When it comes to the text, don't think, I don't want to pick a font. Think about how this is an additional opportunity to be more artistic. Like, you might think it doesn't matter, but you can use the text to influence people's opinion. You can go drab and boring with the text, or fun and bright, or even scary. If you're worried about how readable it is, then make sure to use alt text or write it below the comments. With your species, you're not just creating a silly little fella, you're creating a species with a world history, lore, and vibe. You need to show that off even if you don't write any lore. What am I supposed to be feeling about the character when I see it? I'm just saying, a lot of you neglect your fonts, and it does have a negative impact on it. If you want your species to be reviewed, I put a form link in the description in the comments. You can go to bit.ly/species review and send them in there. That's it for this one though. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the supporters who help fund cool videos like this. If you want your name in the credits too, consider joining the Patreon or members. If you want to send me a tip, try a super comment, and if you want something physical, check out my merch. Thanks again to Aspirant Artist, Paper, Fey Penguin, Momentary Unicorn, Aurora the Puppy Mouth, Sly, Nat, Marius, Yini, Worm Syrup, Rask, Ver, Beef, Bait, Sly again, Colorado Blue, Linky, Baxter Bunny, TG Dante, Fasoku, Linky again, and Splackjack. I'll see you all later. I'm Hunted Wabbits.